What do you do if you're a Scrum Master and you're uncomfortable with public speaking? That's this week on the Badass Agile podcast. Greetings, team. Welcome to the Badass Agile podcast. I'm your host, Chris Williams. Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for joining us for another episode. This week, I want to take a listener question. Let's take a moment to remember why we're here. The whole purpose of this podcast was to create an environment for elite leaders. Because at the end of the day, anyone can read a book and do some agile things. But being agile, and in fact being an agile leader, requires an enhanced set of skills and an enhanced set of mindsets. And that's really what we were here to serve. So a big part of what I want to do with Badass Agile in 2019 is pretty much mimic or simulate the experience of what it would be like if I were there with you on site, giving you coaching. So as often as I can, I want a variety of real-life situations that people are struggling with so that I can help you with them on the air. So let's get right to it. I was doing a presentation the other day, and this email came from Minays, who says, "Hello, Chris. I wanted to thank you for taking the time to talk to us about Agile." Well, you're welcome. Thank you for coming, and I'm really glad you enjoyed it. And I was happy to speak to your team, wonderful group of people, and I had a great time. I really enjoyed the talk and took away a few things, such as not being afraid. That's usually my first factor when I deliver a speech in front of a group. I do manage to get through it with preparation and practice, so I'll just keep at it. And then there's a second part to the question, which I think if you decompose, it's a little bit different. I just completed the Scrum Master training a couple of weeks ago. Congratulations, good for you. You did mention it during the talk, but I'm not sure if the techniques we learned are related to Agile. If you wouldn't mind clarifying, it would be much appreciated. Okay, so that question has more to do with the fact that when I was talking about Agile, I was talking about Badass Agile. So the get visionary, get focused, get humble, get flexible, get gritty. And those values, I think, if you just went through the Scrum Master training, you're like, that wasn't in the book. Where is that coming from? So I'll take a moment at the end to clarify that as well. Well, let's go back to the first question. If you are a Scrum Master, do you have to be good at public speaking? Well, it would certainly help, wouldn't it? Because at the end of the day, not only do you have to be in front of people speaking, but you have to be good on the fly. You have to be situationally aware and responsive and adept so that you can serve your team. So what do you do if you're the sort of person who anytime you're up in front of a few people and have to say something, you get the dry mouth and the shakes and that kind of stuff? Well, I certainly used to have that problem too. So you're not alone, first of all. It's helpful to remember a couple of things. So here's the way I want you to look at it and the way I want you to attack it. I personally wouldn't go for the fear of speaking and try to attack it or address it. The fear of speaking has a source from elsewhere. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you have a fear of anything, in general, logic is not going to cure it. So I can sit here and reason with you and give you all kinds of stats and figures, and that's probably not going to change anything because the fear lives within you. It's not something that you think about. It just kind of happens, doesn't it? And the other thing to remember is that the traditional advice that people give, well, just picture your audience naked, I think it's useless. When I was younger, as I mentioned, I suffered from nervousness when I was speaking, and I remember trying that, and it didn't do anything. And there's a reason for that. So let's dig in a little deeper. So I'm not going to give you a ton of logic, but I do have to help you frame the way you're thinking about a situation every time you get up in front of people, because your thoughts do influence how your body perceives danger, and then the emotion involved in that starts to influence your thoughts. And it tends to snowball and you have no control over it. You may not even be aware of it. So let's get a little bit of knowledge to put ourselves in the right frame of mind at least. There's nothing abnormal or unusual about a little bit of social anxiety. There was a time when being socially awkward or being unfit in front of the tribe would have gotten you ostracized. And that meant you had no defenses. That meant you had no help with food. That meant you weren't a preferential mate. So those things technically could have meant your doom. So there is something going on when we don't feel like we fit in. It shakes our confidence a little bit. There is a natural biological source for that worry. But as is the case with most fear, that worry doesn't really serve us anymore, does it? But with that said, try turning it off. Of course you can't, or we wouldn't be having this discussion. So here's what I find is helpful to know. Having lived through it and gotten much, much, much better at it, it's not from trying to reduce the fear or trying to tell yourself things that will calm the fear down. Let's remember this. It doesn't matter what you do in life. People won't like you, and people will like you. You will never enter a room, even the presentation that I gave that you were at. There are people in that room who are like, that was a waste of time. I didn't really like it. That will always be the case, and there's very little, if anything, you can do to give yourself a 100% hit rate. So the thing that you fear, that you will be perceived as socially weird or not accepted or not preferred or not favored by another person, is something that, the more time you spend worrying about it and trying to work around it, it's wasted time because there is nothing that you can do to make yourself liked by everybody. The good news is, on the flip side, is that the people who like you will really like you. So think about this from your own perspective. I write with a fountain pen. Now, if I were to walk into a room and just start blathering on about fountain pens, most of the people in the room will be like, what's he talking about? They're not going to care. They're just not interested. They don't yet have a reason anyway to be interested in what I'm talking about. On the other hand, if I'm sitting at my desk and I'm writing with a fountain pen, occasionally people will walk up and say, oh, you write with a fountain pen? And I'll say, yeah. And that's all I'll say, because even at that point, when a person has expressed a little bit of interest, it doesn't mean that they want me to go on and on at length about fountain pens. So sometimes I'll just say, yeah, I have for a long time. And then if they ask another question, like, what do you like about it? Or, hey, can I try it? Or how is it different than a regular pen? Now they're interested. But now flip the script and think of it from your perspective. Have you ever walked up to somebody and they have an unusual thing or a photograph in their cubicle or whatever, and just out of politeness, you ask them, oh, looks like you're really into model trains. And then they just, with that prompting and nothing else, they go on and on and on at length about model trains, and you weren't really that interested in the first place. In fact, most of it is lost on you. You start rolling your eyes up into your head with boredom. So you know this instinctively and from your own life that not everyone you meet is going to be fascinating to you. So when you go babbling on and on about your fountain pen, you're going to lose some people. Some people aren't going to care. Some people aren't going to be interested. And that's okay, and that's fair because you're the same way, right? So that's the first thing I want you to remember, is that not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay because you do the same thing too. The second thing that you need to remember is that trying to force a way of speaking, trying to force a way of thinking, or even just trying to force your ideas on other people is never going to work. Your best and most reliable source of becoming a captivating and interesting speaker is to simply talk about what you're passionate about. And this goes way back to the beginning of my podcast, and the first Agile principle that you just finished learning is be visionary. Know what the world is going to look like when you're done with it. Know who you serve, how you serve them, and why. There's plenty of information in the old podcasts about that. But if you have that, once you've been living it for a while, you don't have to force your passion for anything, and it's the passion that's actually infectious. It turns out it doesn't really matter what you say. It has way more to do with how you say it, the conviction behind it, the passion, the authenticity. Those are the things that other people are attracted to. Think of words as just icons that you make with your voice. It is up to people to assign meaning to them. And likewise, it is up to you to assign meaning to a situation where you feel like someone's not that interested in what you're saying. Yes, you can carefully sculpt words in such a way that it attracts people or influences people, but that seems to me to be a lot of investment for very little return. In actual reality, what makes connection is emotional authenticity. So simply be there. Make sure that you're speaking about something that you're passionate about. If you stick with things that you're truly passionate about, that passion has probably caused you to immerse yourself in the topic. So you're already an expert because you've spent a lot of time in it, because there's nothing you would rather be doing with your time. And when that happens, it decreases all of the fear and worry about screwing up, because if you miss a line, it doesn't matter. If you go off script, it doesn't matter. You're talking from that place in your heart where the thing that matters to you most is just naturally flowing out of you, out of your desire to serve and help others. Another thing that your passion does that I think is important for some people who fear speaking is that it authorizes you. A lot of people kind of get nervous because they think I'm a fraud. I don't belong here. I'm no expert. I'm just some Scrum Master. But the fact that you're really passionate about helping people through Agile, through Scrum, makes you an expert, even if you've only been doing it for 3 or 4 months. That's okay. There's one simple rule that you should follow, and I learned this early in my career from a time when I was a certified trainer, and I'd met a lot of other certified trainers, and there weren't many at the time, so the quality was a little bit mixed, and there was one guy who would just read from the book, and if you asked him a question, he didn't know the answer, he'd make it up. And I remember the people in the class with me when I was observing it knew that he was making it up. They could feel it, and they really didn't appreciate it. So never, ever, ever pretend to know the answer for something just to make yourself appear more confident. If you don't know, I do this all the time still, say, you know what's a great question? I don't know the answer to it. Then put it in a parking lot or give somebody your email address so you can do some research and follow up. You see, in your email, one of your sentences, I really enjoyed the talk and took away a few things such as not being afraid. I don't preach to people, oh, don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid. But rather, I would tell you to invite failure. Allow yourself to get in front of people, to make the speech, and screw up. Because doesn't Agile teach us that if you wait to give that speech until you're fully ready, you're never going to be ready. And you're cheating your customers out of the value that you can bring by speaking today. Think of it. You're a Scrum Master. We would like to go and be fully prepared anytime we set foot on stage and have to deliver in front of people, but you never know what's going to come up in a team room. So how are you going to prepare? Should we put you in an incubator for 10 years and let you see and experience everything you could possibly experience and then unleash you so that you're more confident in front of people? That doesn't make any sense. Even after 10 years, you still won't be fully ready for everything. You need to start now. And what do we do in Agile when we fail? We collect feedback, we do better, and it's easy to get feedback as a speaker. Have someone pull their phone out and record you for 5 minutes. You'll see for yourself. Do I say too much? Do I say too much? For me, I will say and I'll say so when I need a moment to think. Right? So I know I have things to work on. I have to work on my pacing. I have to work on my word count. I am always getting better and improving. So if I still have to improve, and I've been doing this for a long time now, is it unusual that you have to improve too? Of course not. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So stick to these simple rules. Realize not everyone is going to like you, and that's okay. Your job it's almost like fishing, is to throw your line out and give your best attention to the ones who bite. Number 2, know your vision, know your service, because that will drive and authorize everything you do, including standing in front of a group of people. Number 3, never pretend to be something you're not, and never pretend to have answers that you don't. Be okay with failing, with screwing up, with not knowing. That takes a lot of the pressure off yourself. And maybe the other piece of useful advice I should give is get out of your head and into theirs. Because as long as you're up there and you're really focused on your experience and what's happening to you, you're not focused on the audience. So give yourself a break. Ask people questions. So halfway through your first slide, you can simply say, show of hands, how many people have experienced that one before? And if someone puts their hands up and say, do you want to tell us about it? What happened? Well, not to go too far off tangent, this is a really great way to remind yourself that this show is about them. It's not about you. And if you're there to serve, this should make perfect sense. And maybe that's the most helpful thing I can say to you is that once you get in the room, remember who you're there for. Now, does all of this mean that you shouldn't prepare for a speech or a presentation? Well, again, I think that you have to be equally good at off-the-cuff and prepared presentations. So I do badass unscripted, and then I do badass fully scripted. And when I do unscripted, I make a lot more mistakes. But even when I do scripted ones, I still make a lot of mistakes. So yes, there will be times where you have an opportunity to basically script what you're going to say and start with a beginning and a middle and an end, and there's a point that you're leading up to, and you're going to arrange evidence and examples in such a way that you take your listeners on a journey. That's really great, but I think you should also be good at spontaneous storytelling. I have an episode on that too, whereby you're constantly collecting the things that happen to you and the experiences, and you put them in a little database, so that you can start to memorize them and recall them when they're needed. Your life is rich and full of wonderful things and insights and experiences that you've had. Those are valuable to other people. It makes you relatable. So I think you need to be able to do both. But if you're going to prepare, sure, rehearse. Sure, memorize and know where your stories go. At very least, know the flow of your presentation. But one of the most helpful things that I do to prepare is I have something called a pre-performance meditation, which is for 5 minutes before I go into a quiet room where no one can find me. And I say things to myself like, remember, you are not going to catch everyone today. You are here for the people that do want what you have. Those people will feel a sense of destiny, like they were supposed to come to this presentation today just to meet you. Those are the people that you want to give your best energy to. Everybody else, in your mind, you thank them for coming and send them on their way and hope that they find what they're looking for at the next presentation. It is okay if you don't connect with them. I think that everyone should have to do a little bit of sales so that you can learn pretty quickly that you're going to meet 100 people just to get 10 people sort of interested just to be able to close 1 or 2 sales. That's just how it works. And the rest of my pre-performance meditation, which I actually have written down, by the way, it has something to do with the fact that, you owe these people your best. You only have one chance to make a first impression, so come from that place of authenticity, give them your passion, share your purpose with them, give them your best service, and you can't go wrong. Now, after that, just say yes to every opportunity that you can. Recognize that every chance that you have to speak to another person is a chance for you to practice and refine your skills. Never mind trying to picture them naked. That just isn't going to work. It isn't going to help. Some of you may recall, too, I'll frequently say your reason for doing everything matters more than anything. I'll use the example of, would you walk on a 2x4 that's lying on the ground? The answer is sure, why not? But if that 2x4 was perched between 2 30-story buildings, would you still walk across it? And the answer is no way, especially me with my fear of heights. Now, if that 2x4 was perched atop those 2 30-story buildings and your child was on the other one, would you then walk across the 2x4? And the answer is definite maybe. You'd certainly figure out a way to get across there. So your reason matters. And the fact that you want to get good at public speaking, not to glorify yourself, but rather so that you can reach more people and preach the important work of agility to teams and companies, means that there is no way you won't get better. Now, the second part of your question has to do with how your Scrum Master certification is related to what I teach in Badass Agile. And so I understand why that can be confusing. Here's the thing. What you learn taking your Scrum Master training is how to do Scrum things. What I teach is to say, listen, Scrum things, if all we do is learn how to do Scrum techniques, then how do we pick up and move Agile concepts over to, let's say, a legal department? Or how do we pick it up and move it over to a construction or renovation project? It's far better for us to understand the guiding principles of Agile and to realize that the same principles that make you good at Scrum or good at Agile make you good at anything in life. You have to get visionary. You have to get focused. You have to get humble and flexible. You have to get gritty. So how do the two fit together? Here's an example. Part of what I teach under getting focused is to know what you're after, have a vision, and then list all of the things that roll up to that vision in priority sequence. We call that backlog grooming in Scrum. Getting focused also means taking big things and breaking them into smaller things. Maybe that's story writing. Getting focused means looking at the smallest frame of work that you can reasonably concentrate on and executing on that, and only when it's done and done to perfection do you move on to the next one. Well, that's sprint planning and that's iterative delivery. All of the things that I teach line up against the Agile and Scrum principles and the Scrum practices. The reason why I teach it in Badass Agile the way I do is so that you can elevate above traditional textbook Scrum and apply these principles anywhere, even if it's not software dev, even if it's not pure business. And remember, if what I just said is true, that you're not going to be able to reach everybody, then there will be times that the people that you can't reach are just looking for a little bit of a shift in thinking or maybe a slightly different wording. And if you understand the core principles behind Agile and Scrum, then you have the tools that you need to change the conversation, to give them a different example, to explain it in a different way, to find another analog or another story in nature or in your own shared consciousness that you can use to help convince and influence people. To my mind, that's the elite skill, is when you not only understand these values, but when you live them and realize how universal they are. So I hope that helps. These were great questions, and I want to thank you for taking the time to send it in. And I want to encourage all of our listeners out there to take your questions where you need help or things that you need some advice on and send them in. Send them to contact@badassagile.com. And folks, thank you so much for listening. You can reach out as always at badassagile.com. Find me on Twitter at badass_agile. And don't forget to sign up for the email newsletter. I'll see you next time. And until then, stay badass.